Love them or hate them, remakes of beloved horror films have become so normal by this point that it is hard to get angry when you hear the announcement of a new one. I think we as fans are a bit more forgiving today than what we was 10 years ago, as at least now not all new horror films are remakes, instead they are spread out between other new and scary original films. More remakes are on the way of course, some that might be interesting and some that I'm just gonna try my hardest to ignore. So I thought it would be fun to compile together a list of movies that I actually wouldn't mind seeing a remake of. Some of them are well regarded but could be interesting to see updated, while some are flawed films with a good premise to them. I am sure that not everyone will agree on this list, and that's perfectly fine. The films are not listed as a top 10 list, but rather just in alphabetical order. So let's get into it. I am Thorstein from Cinema Terror, and these are 10 horror movie remakes that I would not mind watching.
The Blob. Terror has no shape.
I have a huge soft spot for The Blob from 1988, which itself is a remake of the first Blob movie from 1958. Taking into consideration that it went 30 years between those two versions, what would be better than to give us a new Blob movie 30 years later again in 2018? There has been talks of bringing the Blob back to the big screen several times during the last 10 years. Rob Zombie was at a point attached to do it, but opted out as he didn't want to do another remake after delivering his two Halloween movies. The new guy currently attached to do it is Simon West, which you might remember from Con Air and Expendables 2. And he is not unfamiliar with horror remakes either, as he did the 2006 version of When a Stranger Calls. Even if I'm one of the few that aren't a huge fan of Guillermo del Toro, I've always thought that he would be a good choice for this project, as he would probably take the film and give it a huge scale. So if West ends up dropping out of the project, then Del Toro would definitively be my first choice for the job. The Blob remake is sadly going very slow, and I'm worried that this won't make it past pre-production. But if it ever gets off the ground and into cinemas worldwide, then I will definitively be right there to see the big jello-looking creature slurp up human beings once again.
The Boogeyman. He's going to get you.
The Boogeyman is a 1980 supernatural slasher that I actually quite enjoy, although I can totally understand if others find it to be a flawed, boring film. The idea of an invisible killer and evil being captured within a mirror works fine for me, and I can see this working in an updated modern version. Die-hard fans of the original series or director Ulli Lommel will be quick to point out that there is a new Boogeyman movie coming out soon by Lommel called Boogeyman Reincarnation. But with all respect to him and his fans, I'd rather see a new take on the story by another filmmaker. Others might also mention a 2005 movie, Boogeyman, by Sam Raimi's Ghost House Pictures, but that's not really a remake of Lommel's movie, but rather just a movie with the same title. Even if none of the movies had a great reputation, just the title of Boogeyman alone is enough for it to be a project worth bringing back to life.
Candyman, you don't have to believe. Just beware.
Yes, I'd welcome a remake of Candyman. Now this is surely the one I will get most complaints about, and that's perfectly fine. Candyman is one of the best, if not the best horror movie of the 90s, and an absolute classic that well deserves to be mentioned among the all-time greats. There was actually talks about doing a remake of it back in 2008, with some rumors of the studio turning Candyman into a white pale person, which is how it was portrayed in the original source material. And there was also some small talks about a Candyman vs Pinhead movie, which Clive Barker thankfully turned down. The reason why I want a new Candyman movie is because the character and his backstory is great, and there's obviously never gonna be a fourth one into the original franchise. I also think there is a lot of stuff that can be done with this character in today's society, and the opportunity of that alone makes me welcome the idea of bringing him back, even if it means that we'll see a Candyman not played by Tony Todd. A remake of Cannibal Ferox, I say? Yes. To be honest, it doesn't really matter if it's Cannibal Ferox that are used over other Italian cannibal films such as Jungle Holocaust or Mountain of the Cannibal God. I just want a new film with us so-called civilized people go out to the Amazon jungle for some reason and come across natives that take revenge on the bully civilized man by eating his flesh. And yeah, I haven't forgotten about Eli Roth's The Green Inferno, but that one didn't do much for me at all. Take the idea of that one and put it in the hands of a better filmmaker, and I'd be all in for it. Regarding why I went with Cannibal Ferox instead of other films, it's not like Ferox has a reputation worth keeping either, as it is mean-spirited, crazy and insanely violent movie. The name would put some expectations to the table without having any chance of destroying the original, Which is why I would not want to touch, say, Cannibal Holocaust, as that movie is very much a movie that is already as good as it could be. So yeah, bring me some more cannibal films, please.
Now we'll have some fun.
In Highway to Hell. This is not ordinary horror, comedy, action, adventure.
Ate Young's Highway to Hell from 1991 is another childhood favorite of mine. Its story is basically about a young couple on the way to Las Vegas takes a supposedly shortcut where suddenly a demon cop shows up, kidnaps the girl and takes her to hell, with her boyfriend chasing after them to get her back. The film had a troubled production and wasn't exactly a success story for MGM. I personally thought the movie was and still is a lot of fun, even though it does have some glaring flaws to it. The potential of the premise, however, is greater than what the end product ended up being, making this a promising project to reboot. But unless someone in Hollywood just happens to have some love for this film, then it sadly seems unlikely that this idea will ever happen.
Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Stephen Ray, Antonio Banderas, Kirsten Dunst, and Christian Slater. Interview with the Vampire.
While the 1994 movie adaptation of Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire, starring Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, is not a bad movie at all in my opinion, there is a potential to create a movie or movie franchise, as everything can't be just a one-off these days, that could become even better than the original film. There has been talks of a new interview movie for the last few years, with people like Jared Leto attached to play the vampire Lestat. But in last November it was announced that Anne Rice had regained rights to her franchise and that she was looking for a solution to bring the story into the television format instead of the big screen. It could be argued that such a big story could be better suited as a television show, but being in the minority of not being a fan of most TV shows, even the popular ones, I still would prefer to see the vampire Lestat bring all his glory back to the big screen. I'm gonna guess that you never even heard of Lake of the Dead, so let me tell you about the film first. This is considered to be the first horror movie we have produced in my home country of Norway, way back in 1958. While the horror is quite tame in it, there is an aspect of the evil lurk in the lake that I believe could work well in a horror movie today. We do have a Norwegian folklore about a creature living in a lake called Nøkken, who tries to lure people into it and then proceeds to drown them. He basically represents all the danger about water. While I don't believe it will happen, I would like to see the character turn from male to female in a new highly stylized European horror film. And if you are interested in learning more about Lake of the Dead, then I do have a video review of it on my channel.
The stuff is a product of nature, a deadly living organism. It is addictive and destructive. It can overcome your mind and take over your body, and nothing can stop it.
The Stuff is another movie that I'm sure people would get up in arms about if you talk about remaking it. Since I'm not the biggest fan of the movie, I would not mind seeing the concept being updated for today's audience. The concept of The Stuff is just as, if not even more, relevant today as it was back in the 80s, and there are plenty of ways to take the premise and have fun with it. In my head, remaking The Stuff just makes sense, and it feels like a project that shouldn't be able to fail, if it gets the care and effort that it deserves. So if it were up to me, then we will see the return of the Killer Yogurt sometime in the near future.
The Swarm. It is more than speculation. It is a prediction. The Swarm is coming.
I have a thing, if you will, against insects, and bees and wasps are no exception. While I hope I'm not the only one who has this fear against the flying black and yellow demons from hell, there hasn't been that many great killer bee movies over the years. One that has stood out is the 1978 movie The Swarm, which arguably is the best out of the bunch. If you want to see some murdering wasps running around within your screen these days, then you have to settle for the below average sci-fi films that are out there. I believe that there still is room for a serious big budget disaster film with killer bees swarming around and taking us down. There was talks about bringing the Swarm back to the big screen in 2010, but after that the idea seems to have died down. I am still crossing my fingers for it, locking my windows and keeping an eye out for the bee invasion though, and will be happy to see the return of the Swarm.
There's no escape from the blind dead. They are the Templars, devil worshippers, a death cult that has risen from their 1,000-year-old tombs to begin a horrible reign of terror.
While I know there are plenty of fans out there for the Spanish film Tombs of the Blind Dead, I never really cared all that much for it, except for the absolutely awesome look of the undead Templars. I'd like to keep those just as they were in the original and rather see a more exciting film where they cause havoc and destruction. While many of us are suffering from zombie fatigue these days, these bad guys are not zombies in the traditional sense, but rather blind undead knights with a mind and a mission to accomplish. Perhaps it's a bit too obscure to get a remake unless there is a Hollywood filmmaker out there that adores the film, wants to revive it, and has a big enough name for it to actually happen. Until that unlikely scenario comes to life, we will just have to enjoy the Templars in the original films. So there you have it, 10 horror films that I wouldn't mind seeing a remake of. Did you agree with any of these, or perhaps disagree strongly? Which films would you have chosen if you were to make a list like this? Let me know about it in the comment section below, and subscribe and like and all of that stuff if you found this video to be enjoyable. Thank you.